What's good, y'all? Welcome back to 52 Books. Man, yo. Voyage of Mercy, man. I don't know. I guess I'm saying all books is a must read besides that one book. If you've been staying with this channel for a while, you know exactly what that book is. Voyage of Mercy is amazing, man. It's about the potato famine that Ireland went through. And honestly, all the ups and downs. This was America's first humanitarian mission, man. This was America's first. And keep in mind the time that this is. This was 1847. All right? America still had slaves. Slavery was still legal in America in this time. Just keep that in mind. But they got everybody. All the colonies, all the states. Everyone donated. Everyone donated food, materials, everything was donated to save Ireland, to save the Irish people from this famine that was going on. The first person to get there, and that's why he's the most famous, was Robert Bennett Forbes. This man took his USS Jamestown, his boat, got money from the US government. They loaded this boat up. And he took the food to Ireland. Because remember, in part one, he was a famous sailor. He was out there traveling around the world. And he was the man for the job. And so he was the first one to land in Cork Island, Ireland, to bring food and relief to the Irish people. Now, he was just the first of a whole armada that would eventually end up in Ireland to deliver food, to deliver aid, and to deliver help. And that's the main thing of this book. That's what this book is talking about for the main part. It also talks about people leaving Ireland. It talks about all of that. So we're going to talk about that part. But understand, it was Robert Bennett Forbes who was the first one there to help provide relief to the Irish people on the USS Jamestown. That's the famous ship. And that's just how it is, man. It was really good. But let me tell y'all the stuff that was happening behind the scenes. Why the fact that potatoes, y'all. Why the fact that potatoes was what crippled the country. First off, the British continue to be grimy. I'm guessing Ireland is under British rule at the time. And the British passed the Poor, this sounds bad, the Poor Law Extension Act of 1847. And what that basically is that the British government now was making the landlords of Ireland pay for the relief they were getting. Since the landlords had to pay for the relief they were getting, they ended up evicting their tenants to get tenants who would pay. And so they were losing money if tenants couldn't pay, so they had to kick people out. And so as people were being kicked out in these streets, the numbers went higher and higher for people in need. And that was caused because the British went ahead and passed this law that basically said you're going to pay for the relief that you're getting. And again, in this book, the British are grimy, yo. Straight up grimy. In the midst of all this going on, people are hungry, people are dying, and fever breaks out over the whole country. Typhus breaks out. I'm guessing that's a type of typhoid fever. But fever breaks out and people are just dying. And because of that, people started just leaving Ireland in droves. Over 700,000 people left Ireland during this potato famine. So people are leaving Ireland, either going to Liverpool. The British noticed that a whole lot of Irish were coming to England. So you know what they did? They upped their prices and lowered the prices for Canada, for people to go to Canada, because Canada was under British rule at the time. So All of that. And so the Irish were like, man, we don't want to go nowhere else with the British there, man. We're going to go to Liverpool and all that, even though I still think that's conquered by the British. But anyways, all of this was going on. Fever is breaking out. And as people are on the ships, they're dying, right? They're dying. And since there was no priest on board, you know what they did with the bodies? Threw them overboard. They just threw them overboard, and this continued. As people died on the ships, they just threw them overboard. The people who stayed in Ireland were looking meek and deadly and gross. This is just what the book says. It described it as you would walk, you would feel like you were walking in a graveyard because of the corpses. But they weren't corpses. They were just bodies. Bodies that were dying, of people who are still alive. They're just starving for food. That's how bad it was. So why potatoes? Why didn't they grow wheat? Why didn't they grow flour? Wheat and flour the same thing. Why didn't they grow corn? Why didn't they do all this other agricultural stuff? Why potatoes? Well, after King James, William III passed the 1695 penal law banning all Catholic practices. So it's really about anti-Catholic rhetoric. So William III passed the penal law and banned all Catholic practices. So if you were Catholic, wealth was stripped from you, property was stripped from you, real estate was stripped from you, and so you had nothing else. The only thing that you can grow in a small plot of land and yield a huge increase was potatoes. It was easy to manage. You literally just bury them, and it's literally minimal amount of work, and you'll get a huge yield, 100, 200 fold. By the time of the Blight in 1847, a third of the country was reliant on potatoes. They had all the nutrients you needed. Y'all seen the movie The Martian? My man survived on potatoes. So it gives you all your calories that you need. It gives you all the nutrients you need. You missing some protein, but you good for the most part. That's why it was potatoes. That's all they could grow with a little bit of land. It was because of the law passed by William III. The Irish people did what they could with a small amount of land, and the best crop to grow was potatoes. That's why potatoes were so important. To make matters worse, I don't know who this Trevelyan guy is, but we talked about him in the first video. He passed an order that said all soup kitchens in Ireland were to be closed and shut down. Talk about kicking you while you are down. Thankfully, Father Matthews talked to him, and he only closed a third, well, 2/3 of all the soup kitchens that were open. But that's really all that was happening in the background of the famine that was happening. Of course, they ended up getting relief. And actually what ended up happening was they had 2 blights of potato famine, yo. So that's the book, man, and everything that went down in it, man. The Voyage of Mercy is a really good book. That was just the background of everything that was happening. And the reason I mentioned that all this went down in 1847 was for 2 reasons. 1, that's the date everything went down. But 2, slavery was still happening in America. And it blows my mind that even though this country still has slaves and slavery was legal, they put all their resources together to go help out a foreign country who was facing starvation and disease. That's amazing that they did that. But to me, that says, man, people only act on the things that they care about. And so America at that time didn't care about black people. They didn't care about African Americans. I just thought it was interesting that all of America at the time put all of its resources together to help fight this potato famine that was going on in Ireland, and at the same time they still had slaves. Pick up this book. This book is amazing. It's a great read, easy read. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of 52 Books. Please like and subscribe. And if you have a book recommendation, put it down in the description below. Peace.